Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.
Mr. Chairman, I call up Amendment SIL 21D10. This is an amendment in a similar spirit to Senator Cotton's amendment, but it is a far narrower amendment. What this amendment does is it adds to the protections of this bill current and former members of Congress. Like federal judges, members of Congress more and more are subject to threats of violence. We have seen in this body, tragically, the horrific shooting of Gabby Giffords. We have seen in 2017 a deranged gunman who went to the congressional baseball practice, who opened fire, who wounded multiple members of Congress, who nearly killed Congressman Scalise. Two of our colleagues, Senator Flake and Senator Paul, were at that game, and it was only the providential fortuity that Representative Scalise's security detail was there that prevented that day from being a truly horrific slaughter, and the heroic men and women of law enforcement who engaged and stopped that gunman. We've also seen Senator Paul violently assaulted at his own home, hospitalized, require surgery, have ongoing health issues as a result of that violence. And all of us have seen, I'm confident every member of this committee has received multiple death threats. That is unfortunately a component of serving an elected office now. And there's a long tradition in this body of judges and members of Congress being treated with some modicum of parity. I support Senator Cotton's efforts to expand it more broadly to law enforcement, but I think in terms of a narrow and focused amendment where there are serious and ongoing threats, adding members of Congress would be an improvement.
I just want to say this is a glorious day that I agree with both Senator Cotton and Senator Cruz about the urgency for us to do more to protect people who choose to serve publicly. We have, Senator Cruz and I both have witnessed not only incidences of horror, but even incidences that are profoundly, I think, violations. As one of our colleagues had people enter a bathroom. This is more of an indication that we should be doing more to protect our members from the growing threats that we see within our community. And again, I pledge to you, I would very much like to work with you on a bill to do just that. I would say to summon the wisdom of Senator Kennedy, this is a bill that has been put together and worked on. It has the ability to get to the floor for a vote and get passed. I'm worried that if we add something like this on it, it's going to weaken our chances to actually get it done.
Anyone else seek recognition? Senator Kennedy.
Yes, as is often the case, I find myself in agreement with Senator Cruz, and I think he's got an excellent idea. But I want to go back to my original thought. I'm really worried if we expand the scope of this bill, it's going to kill it. And I can see somebody arguing, well, you know, Congress people, here we go again. You know, they're an insular bunch, they're elitists, they don't even want to be able to have the public contact them. I don't agree with that, but I would hope that we could incorporate that into Senator Cotton's separate bill. I'm going to repeat. I mean, maybe this is just a baby step, but it's still a step. And I think if there's a reasonably good chance we can pass this bill on the Senate floor, but I really worry if we start expanding it. And those are my thoughts for what they are worth.
If there's no one else seeking
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz, Coons, White House.
So I just wanted to comment. I understand the sentiments that Senator Booker is expressing and Senator Kennedy, and anytime you have a bill moving forward, the argument can always be, well, gosh, if we add something to this bill, it jeopardizes the chances of passage. And that's an argument all of us are familiar with and that we always face. And I understand the concern with Senator Cotton's amendment. I support it, but it is a significant broadening of the scope. What I would suggest in this instance is this is not a significant broadening of the scope. It is focusing on a narrow category where there are repeated, multiple significant threats that are ongoing and that are escalating. And, you know, tragically, I think it's only a matter of time before we see another act of violence in the same tradition that we have seen multiple times. Both Senator Booker and Senator Kennedy suggested it would jeopardize the bill. I would ask a question. Listen, it's not controversial, I think, that the members of this committee on both sides of the aisle are among the more contentious members of this body.
Hear, hear.
And among the more willing to disagree and disagree vigorously. And so I would just ask, is there anyone on this committee who would pull their support for this bill if members of Congress were included? And I would suggest if there isn't, if the men and women in this room on the Democratic and Republican side of the aisle can agree, the chances of it jeopardizing the bill ultimately are significantly imperiled. And I would further commit to Senator Booker, if this amendment is adopted and the bill passes, and in the journey to the floor there is objection that stops its passage, I would consent to removing the amendment from the bill if that's what it took to pass it. I'm skeptical that including members of Congress would genuinely jeopardize its passage. And I believe if this committee, both sides of the aisle, agreed on it, that it would be a very modest but important addition to the bill to protect the safety of our families and our homes.
I might just observe that Senator Cotton's approach to this is all-embracing, as Senator Booker noted. But for us to then follow up with an amendment saying, but of course we're going to protect ourselves, sends a message to the American public, which I don't think we want to send at this moment. I really believe this notion of taking a separate bill and expanding it to include the category of members of Congress and former members and other elected officials is the right approach and in the right spirit. This brings on an element of controversy which may bring down an absolutely essential bill that Senator Booker brings before us. And I hope that, as Senator Kennedy has noted and others, that we take it a step at a time. And the important step today is the passage of the bill as Senator Booker has proposed. We have two seeking recognition that I've seen: Coons, White House, Klobuchar.
I'll be brief. I think the chairman summarized the comment I was going to make. As someone who's close to both former Congresswoman Giffords and Senator Flake and knows Congressman Scalise and is close to the U.S. Marshal from Delaware, I'm well aware that there's a broad range of threats, increasingly, to those of us who serve here, to law enforcement, to prosecutors, and I do think we need to take action. I think the balance that Senators Booker and Kennedy have spoken to about this bill makes me narrowly come down on the side of voting against this particular amendment, but I just wanted to publicly express my enthusiasm for working with both Senators Cruz and Cotton on helping craft that next bill and trying to make sure we can get a workable bill passed. Thank you.
I'll let Senator
Whitehouse.
I just was going to answer Senator Cruz's question by saying I am one senator who'd be very skeptical of adding ourselves to this bill at this point. I think it's going to take a lot of consideration when we as members of Congress undertake measures that further separate us from our constituents. And while there may be a reasonable pathway, given the dangers that are, in fact, out there, count me skeptical.
Senator Klobuchar.
well, count me not skeptical. I didn't even know about Senator Cruz's amendment, but some members, Senator Chairman, have security for obvious reasons if they're higher up in the Senate, and then others don't. And I think that there are some legitimate threats and things that have happened to people that people don't even know about that aren't public. So I am supporting this amendment. I would withdraw my support if, in fact, it would do anything to hurt the judicial part of this. But I think for us to pretend this isn't happening right now is a wrong path.
Anyone else seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.
Given the comments, it appears that the votes are not here to pass this amendment today. And so accordingly, I'll withdraw my request for a vote on it. But I look forward to following up with the multiple members on both sides of the aisle who have expressed a willingness to work on this issue, because I think it is a serious and important threat. I would note, I actually didn't know this when I introduced the amendment, but I was just handed a note from my staff that said, and Senator Booker will be interested in this, I was told that Senator Paul objected to this bill in the last Congress because it didn't include members of Congress. So I didn't know that, but that's what the note my chief counsel just passed me. obviously Senator Paul has been on the receiving end of 2 of these incidences of violence, and so I know it is an issue he understandably feels very personally impacted by. And so it may be that this amendment is what's necessary for it to move forward, but at least right now the votes are not here in the committee, so I will withdraw the request for a vote on it.
The amendment is withdrawn. Are there any other amendments to the substitute? If not, the question is on.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
I'd
Cotton?
just like to speak briefly before we vote on passage here. I'm going to support this bill. I think it's important that it moves forward. I want to acknowledge Judge Salas and her husband, Mark, and express my deepest sympathy and condolences on behalf of all members of this committee and all Arkansans. No one should ever have to go through what you went through. We've heard a lot about concerns about this bill passing. If we add anything to it, I have the opposite concern about the bill passing. As Senator Cruz just reminded us, the reason this bill didn't pass last year is because Senator Paul, who has faced 2 separate attacks, once on that baseball field across the river in 2017, once on his own home, did want to expand its coverage. I understand that some of you may be concerned about my amendment that says all government officials, state and local, which I think Senator Booker says encompasses more than 20 million persons. Some of you may have the opposite concern about Senator Cruz's amendment that just included members of Congress. Perhaps as we move forward, we can find a middle ground that focuses on federal officers, be they judges or elected officials or executive branch officials. We do have a particular responsibility to all federal officers. There are lots of laws that protect federal officers or federal installations. Some states, like California, have already done this for their state and local officials. Some states, like New Jersey, has passed Daniel's Law to do it there. I think Senator Booker attended that bill signing, in fact. So maybe as we move forward and focus on getting this bill in the shape where it could actually pass across the Senate without objections from any other senators, that might be a common middle ground, but we'll work together going forward. I will be supporting it today with the hope that we can modify it and pass it into law in a future date.
Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with Senator Cotton on that.
Senator Ossoff?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. First, let me extend my deepest condolences to Judge Salas, to your husband, to your whole family for your loss, and my gratitude to Senator Booker, Senator Menendez, the bipartisan co-sponsors, for working on this legislation whose spirit and intent I fully support. I'll be voting present on this roll call vote as I continue to discuss with Senator Booker some questions I have regarding the restrictions on publication to ensure that they are the least restrictive means of achieving the noble ends of this bill. In no way does that vote suggest that I don't take utterly seriously the ongoing threat to judicial safety and the threats of safety to other officials. I want to register that for the record and again express my deepest empathy, concern, and condolences to the family. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, Senator Grassley will be added as a co-sponsor. Senator Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, I had worked with the Administrative Office of the Courts and the bill sponsors, raising concerns with Section 5C, which I believe is now Section 4C under the new Manager's Amendment. We've got concerns with this. It creates a new federal grant program for state and local law enforcement. This is a situation where when we look at the authorities, we need to avoid excessive federal intrusion into state and local law enforcement. And, you know, less than a year ago, I had an agreement with the sponsors and the Administrative Office of the Courts to strike this provision. I'm not sure what happened or where the oversight occurred. I'd like to vote for this bill today and get it passed out, but if the bill sponsor, Senator Booker, is willing to work with me as this bill moves to the floor on this, I'd be happy to let my amendment go today and vote for it.
Anyone else seek recognition? Senator Booker?
I just want to say Senator Lee's staff has been really great in conversation with mine over this matter and others. They've been great contributors to the bill overall, and of course, I will always lean in to work with you, Mike, on this matter and others.
Great, thank you.
Senator Cruz?
Mr. Chairman, very briefly, I would ask consent that I be added as a co-sponsor of the
Without
bill
objection.
as well, and I would also ask that I be recorded as voting no on Selinger and Harris, both of which were considered earlier in this markup.
Without objection. If there's no further effort to seek recognition or add an amendment, we will vote on final passage of S 2340 as amended. The clerk will call the roll.